Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Dr. Campbell from Quarantine Racism Educational Services, and today I want to talk to you about building belonging from day one. First week plans for inclusive classrooms. Now, our objectives for today are to understand why the first week will set the tone for you this year. You'll learn about structured grade level lesson plans and daily plans that you can use. And you'll also be able to explore the tools and the resources that will support your effort. Just a little bit about ourselves. I am Dr. Campbell. I am the CEO of Quarantine Racism Educational Services. I am also the author of the book titled Promoting Positive Racial Teacher Student Classroom Relationships. We offer a course titled Promoting Positive Racial Teacher Student Classroom Relationships on our website, quarantineracism.com. And it's approved in 5 states, 5 different states. Those Department of Educations for the state approved our course. And we also have two very active brand ambassadors. One is Miss Carsonell, and the other one is Dr. Moomin, and they are a great addition to our team. So, why does the first week matter? I'm a former math teacher, and I remember as a math teacher, first year I came in and I wanted to be strong. I wanted to make sure the kids didn't run over top of me. And so I probably was overbearing, just in retrospect. And even it took me a couple years to realize that one of the most important factors in the classroom was the relationship that I had with my kids. But that begins and you set that tone in the first week of school or your first week of school. And this could be any teacher. This way, you're able to shape the culture of the classroom. You're also able to shape the expectations for the classroom for the entire year. You have an opportunity where you can build trust. You can provide the students with psychological safety. And that's something that our kids really need today. You also will be able to support their social, emotional well being and their engagement in your classroom. Now, engagement is important because engagement is tied to academic achievement. Okay. So you want the students to feel like they belong, you want them to feel engaged, and you want them to achieve. So we're going to start off with pre K to second grade, which I like to call early elementary. The specific tools are 5 days to an inclusive classroom, early elementary version. We also have affirmation cards as well as posters. And then in one of our books, we have a family link for take home activities. Now, day one, which is welcoming and making sure the students feel like they belong. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to greet these students by name. Some of their names are going to be difficult to pronounce. Um, but when you take attendance, that's the time to go over each name. And you also get a chance to ask them, is there any other name that they like to be called instead? And if it's appropriate, maybe. Okay. You want to display one of your affirmation um, posters. And we have an example of one here. It says, My story matters. And then you want to use our affirmation cards. Now, the affirmation cards for grade level for early elementary, we have 15 affirmation cards that you can get, and they give you different affirmations that you can provide for the children. On day two, we call it identity exploration. You want to read a culturally relevant picture book. Now, one of the things that we did was we developed racial equity plans for pre-K all the way up to eighth grade, and we're working on high school now. And in these books, there are about 30 to 35 lesson plans. And for the early elementary children, there's also recommendations for books that you could read to them as well as you implement the lesson plan. You want to have students draw self portraits of themselves. And so I would recommend having a mirror and draw a picture of what they think they look like. And then you want them to share this with the students. This is important because you're going to have different ethnicities, you're going to have different backgrounds, you're going to have different experiences, and you're going to have different types of homes as well as parents. And so the sharing part will help them to become comfortable not only with their own identity, but others will begin to become comfortable with their identity as well. Day three is building a class promise. And you want to build a what we call a class promise poster together. And this class promise poster is the things that they promise to do in your classroom. And when you really look at it, it's almost like developing a set of rules, and they feel important because they're part of this process. And then you want to have students to sign it and stamp their name on it, okay, of their individual poster and display it in the classroom. You have a bulletin board. Maybe this one time, because I know early elementary school teachers, they want their room set at the beginning of the year, and so you leave one blank and you display their work. And there's some research behind displaying their work, which is important. Day 4 and 5, strengths and family connections. Now, we have an affirmation coloring book activity for preschool to second grade, and you could take one of those and make a copy for them and have everybody color one, okay? Or you could have a classroom set that they have for themselves. And what's nice is if you have a classroom set and you have those children who are really energized and sometimes they need something to do in addition, well, this is a tool that you can use, okay? And then you also want to send home a message to the family, and you want to provide the family with a positive message, and a positive message about you, positive message about their young person. Now, next, we're going to talk about the upper elementary school, which is grades 3 to 5. And the tools that we use for them are 51st Steps Activity Guide, grades 3 to 5 affirmation cards, as well as classroom posters. Now, these following activities are designed to build their confidence, to help them become more responsible, and to also provide them a voice in your classroom. When you're doing instruction, you want them to feel comfortable with the question and answer period, because there's a lot of research that talks about a lot of kids will shut down during that period. And that's when the real teaching and assessment happens. And so you give them an opportunity to open up in your first week. And so you want to begin with an affirmation card. We have specific affirmation cards for the upper elementary level. There are 15 different affirmations in the deck that we have, and you want to create a classroom values chart. And you can have each child talk about what they really value in the classroom. And what I always say is when you're doing those type of activities, first of all, it's important to write what they say, because when you write what they say, they feel like they're part of it. And then you can kind of whittle it down, or make it less complicated, and ask them which words look the same or mean the same. And then you can get down to maybe 5 to 10 words. on your values chart. So, day two, you want to do identity and culture. And this is when you use our book titled 50 Brave Choices for the cultural sharing activity. Now, in this book, we have about 35 activities that you could use with the students. You also want the students to bring in some type of personal item or even a story that they have, and then have them share. Okay. This empowers them. It gets other children to better understand who they are as a person, but it also gets you a better opportunity to understand how they are as a young person. Day three and four are building trust and voice. In day three, you want to do a partner share where they work in groups of twos. And you say, the question is one thing I want you to know about me. And they share it. And then at the end of the session, you could ask certain people to share or ask them to share what they thought was interesting. And so now you have group participation. And then day four, you want to brainstorm classroom ownership. And this is another way of integrating classroom rules, but the classroom rules comes from them. And so now the responsibility falls on them. Okay. Day five is for reflection and celebration. And you want the students to write what was their week one win. And you want to write this on a card, okay? And you want to display and share it and have them share it aloud. And this will create a positive closure for the week. Next is middle school. Now, I have a godson who is going to the seventh grade. And one of the things that I explained to him was that I said that going to the seventh grade is probably one of the hardest grades to be in. And I said, because you're learning new things and you're growing and you're questioning things at a higher level. But at the same token, it can also be a very challenging time for that seventh grade teacher. And so that's why this is so important, okay? And so the tools that we use is we have a middle school Black Learners Matters 2 coloring book. We have affirmation cards that are age and grade appropriate. And then we also have a culturally responsive classroom toolkit. Excuse me. So day one is connection and belonging. You start with an affirmation. Now, most of these children in middle school, they start in either what they call a homeroom or advisory period. This is where they all meet because they exchange classes or either the teachers go to different classes. It really depends on what the principal wants. But you can do this during that period, and you can start off with an affirmation, and then you put the students into a getting to know you circle. Now, when you do the getting to know you circle, I would recommend maybe groups of four. Um, Anything less may be problematic, and anything more is definitely going to be problematic. And you make sure everybody has an opportunity to share. One of the things that I used to do as a teacher was when I did group work, I always taught them what their different roles were in the group. And that may be a good opportunity to interject that. Day two, which is identity awareness, you want to get the coloring book and you provide them with one for reflection, one of your choosing, or if you have a classroom set, you ask them to choose one, okay? And one of the options you could have during day two is you could have them write a short written response to one of your affirmation cards. Now, it's great because you're also integrating writing as well. And That's that's cross disciplinary, interdisciplinary. So day 3 and 4 is creating norms and leadership. Day 3, I would build we build you build a community agreement, which is a nice fancy way of saying classroom rules. And you let them come to this agreement. And then on day 4, you do strength sharing activities where you discuss different leadership roles in the classroom. You can also discuss different leadership roles in the school as well. Day 5 is reflection. You want to use a prompt. You want to say one word that describes my first week. Now, what's nice is that this also gives you a chance to assess how they felt during their first week. And so then that way you're not coming back blind. You get a chance to reflect as well. Okay. And you get them to share. And this helps to build not only a connection with you, but sometimes the young people are going to get up and they're going to say some of the same things. And so now they're going to build connections amongst themselves. And then finally, there's high school. So we have a high school starter kit, which also includes a My Voice Matters journal as well as leadership cards. And day 1, you want to use for voice and reflection, you want to use a journal prompt. So now you have them writing and you want them to respond to the following prompt. What I hope for this year. What's your goal for this year? And high school is 9 to 12, so it's going to be different. Okay. And one of the options that you could use is they would share with a partner and share what their goals are. Okay, day 2, I apologize. Day 2 is identity mapping, and you will find that in our one of our toolkits. And you use this to spark conversations in regards to diversity and inclusion. And so, you're going to talk about gender, you're going to talk about ethnicity, as well as some other factors incorporated in gender mapping. Day 3 and 4, day 3, you want to create class norms, which is the same as classroom rules. What do we, because you don't need to be strict to be effective, but you do need to create an environment where the students say, I remember when I was working as an assistant principal, and this one teacher, she had ninth graders after lunch. And I mean, she said that when the ninth graders came in after lunch, she said they were off the hook. And so I said to her, I said, why don't you, and I talked to her about this process of creating a shared vision and from that creating classroom rules. And she came back and she told me, she said, I don't even have to hold them accountable. She said they would come into the classroom and say, oh, you're late. This your second time late. That's a phone call home. And I laughed because it made her job easier as a teacher. And she was a first year teacher. Okay. So that's what this is all designed to do. Day 4, which is a leadership minute mini challenge. And the question that, or the prompt that you want to use is one way I can lead in this space. And space can be defined as school. You can define space as home, community, definitely classroom. Okay. And then there's day 5. You want them to write a letter to themselves. And in this letter, you want them to write their affirmations about themselves as well as their goals. And then you have them seal it in the envelope for mid year reflection. Okay. Really great. Now, this is some good stuff. And so you also want to enhance your family and community connections. We recommend to sit home a conversation guide for caregivers. You want to encourage daily affirmations at home. You could send them samples of affirmations. And then you want to host a virtual meeting with them, And this is important because one of the ways that teachers are evaluated is how they interact with the families. And if you meet with families once a month, once every 2 weeks virtually for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and I always recommend you set the agenda and you send them out the agenda beforehand. And if they want to add to the agenda, you can do that in the next meeting. Or if it's something really important to the parent, you can say something like, well, why don't you hold on and we can have a one on one. But that connection is going to be real important because what happens now is if you get a young person who's even thinking about acting up in your classroom, they know that you can get mom or dad on a virtual conference and take care of it immediately. Okay. So, some of the practical tips, okay? You want to use these strategies just for a few moments in the class, maybe as a warm up activity in the first week, okay? Display affirmation charts on your wall all year because that's going to make the young people feel like they belong. Whatever routines you develop, keep them consistent and keep them predictable. You also want to reflect on your practice. And we have a book titled Black Learners Matter to a Year of Reflective Practice. And this is a book that you can use for yourself. And so we do have resources. We have a store at store.quarantineracism.com. We have affirmation cards, starter kits, classroom posters, professional development tools. You can use the QR code for free downloads and guides. And here is the website as well. And so, what I would recommend that you do now is ask yourself, what is one action that you will take on day one to build belonging between you and your students? And so, once again, it's Dr. Campbell. My email is moreinfo@quarantineracism.com. My phone number is 856-566-3267, extension 402. And sometimes it will ask you to put my name in. Um, and so that's how you contact me. And so I just want to thank you very much. Have a great day and thank you.